Welcome to the Manifestation Babe podcast. My name is Catherine Zinkina, and I'm a manifestation expert, master mindset coach, and multiple seven-figure entrepreneur. I'm obsessed with helping you achieve everything that you once thought was impossible. If you're looking to massively up-level your life, your finances, your relationships, your productivity and success, then you have come to the right place. My goal in this podcast is to help you see the infinite potential within yourself to be, do, and have anything that your heart desires. Think of this podcast as your weekly dose of mindset development to help you maximize who you are and where you're going. Leave it to me to provide you with the tools, the resources, the strategies, and teachings that you need to manifest a reality wilder than your wildest dreams. I know we're about to have so much fun together, so thank you so much for pushing play today. And now let's begin. Hello, my beautiful souls, and welcome back to the Manifestation Babe podcast. Today, I have a very special episode announcing a super exciting partnership that's literally been months and months and months in the making now with an organization called Black Girl Ventures. It's literally been in the works since, I swear, like end of July, beginning of August 2020. So clearly, I'm so excited to finally announce this partnership. And in today's episode, I'm actually interviewing the founder of Black Girl Ventures, Shelly Bell. If you don't know who Shelly Bell is or anything about her organization, Black Girl Ventures, let me fill you in before we dive into this interview because she is such a powerhouse. Oh my goodness. Shelly Bell is a system disruptor and business strategist. As a serial entrepreneur and computer scientist with a background in K-12 education and IP strategy, she helps Fortune 500 companies, entrepreneurs, and executives turn great ideas into disruptive strategies to increase revenue. And the organization that Shelly founded in 2016 is Black Girl Ventures, which hosts the largest pitch program for Black and Brown women identifying entrepreneurs in the world. Think Shark Tank meets Kickstarter, where everyone in the audience gets to be a shark. I think that is so freaking awesome. And on March 25th, Manifestation Babe is partnering with Black Girl Ventures to host one of these pitch competitions open to anybody within our community who identifies as a Black or Brown entrepreneur to apply to pitch their tech-enabled revenue-generating businesses. And anybody in our audience, which I encourage you guys all to participate, to be able to directly donate to any of the women pitching their businesses. And the link to all of those details on the pitch competition will actually be in the show notes, which you can check out by swiping up on this episode if you're listening on iTunes or clicking see more if you're listening on Spotify. So if you know someone who would be a great fit for this pitch competition, make sure you share the link with them. This is seriously going to be a life-changing event, and I am so freaking excited. So without further ado, here's Shelly. Hi, Shelly. Thank you so much for coming on to the Manifestation Babe podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm awesome. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I am doing great. I am super excited to not only announce Manifestation Babe's partnership with Black Girl Ventures today, but also I really want to introduce you and your incredible story with my audience. I have done a little bit of research on you, and just it's so incredible what you've done. I mean, for someone who has, from my understanding, scaled like 100 businesses, coming from someone who's only scaled my own, Manifestation Babe, that's so freaking impressive. Can you share a little bit about you and your background and like what got you into the world of business in the first place?
Yeah. So I think it's interesting. I have lived many lives. And so I've worked in workforce development, K-12 education. I worked at the Patent and Trademark Office for a stint. I would say like what landed me in this on this end of entrepreneurship or this entrepreneur story, because I've done many entrepreneur things.
Yeah.
Was I got laid off twice, like back to back almost. And I decided, you know what? I'm not going back to work for anyone, right? I am going to start a business. And it's funny because the last time that I was laid off, I went home and I called California Psychics. And I was like, what is happening to my life? And the woman, she told me, like, when you find the thing you want to do, the money will come, and you're not going to marry the guy you think you're going to marry, right? Because I was engaged
Ooh.
at that point, right? And so it was, my whole life flipped upside down. And I was like, okay, I'm going to start a business. Like, I'm never going back. And the first thing that I built was a teepee in my living room that I planned to rent out. Everybody thought I was crazy. They're like, nobody's going to sleep in the living room in your teepee. I'm like, yes, they will. I was in Home Depot, like gathering wood. I didn't even know how to drill a hole. And and the associates were like, what are you doing? I was telling people, like, I'm going to build a teepee, put it in my living room, and rent it out. So kind of found out Airbnb has a teepee option.
No way. I didn't
And
even know that.
so, yes, they do. And so with that, I put it on my Airbnb, and it got a huge response. Like, almost immediately, I let one woman come and stay. And I was like, you know what? I don't want people sleeping in my living room in a CP. This is not what I want. Like, forget whether or not somebody would do it. I actually don't want this. And so I learned how to do t-shirts from a previous job, and was like, you know what? I'm gonna launch a t-shirt line. So my first line was an LGBT line. It sucked. Nobody bought it. And then I was on the phone with a printer, and I said, you know what? It's made by a Black woman. I should put that on a shirt. And so I literally went to the computer, designed the Made by a Black woman logo to pattern after the Made in America logo. And people loved it. And so, then it really took off, and people were like, oh, I'm Black. My baby's Black. We made by a Black woman. I was like, yeah, that's not what I meant, but run with it.
Yeah.
So, but through that, I started, like, my mom invested some of her retirement. And then I used my tax return to buy my own machines. And through that experience, I started, like, developing relationships with different people. And I started doing business with, like, Google and Amazon. So I'm really passionate about supply diversity, because I had gone through this experience, which really leveled up my business. And so I landed a contract doing some, like, community engagement work with Google. And so I said, okay, I'm going to give Black Girl Ventures 30 days, because my print shop was taking off. I was rocking and rolling. I had changed my life, at least the first level of that at that point. And I'm like, okay, this thing is taking off. Like, Black women not getting access to capital. So first it was, okay, Black women are not getting access to capital. Let's just do something about that. So I put some people together, women pitched their business. I ran the whole thing like a poetry slam. It was like 3 minutes you pitch. The audience actually gives their feedback and donates, and then we voted with marbles and coffee mugs. Literally, it was just like, you like that person? Put your marble in their coffee mug. And that's how it worked. And so people liked it. So I said, oh, well, let's keep doing it. And so kept doing it. And then naturally, I think just my business acumen, I just started going out and getting partners for space and food and different things we need. And it really started steamrolling. So by the time I landed at Google doing the community engagement work, I said, I'm going to give Black Girl Ventures 30 days. If it takes off in 30 days, we'll keep it. And so that meant, though, for me, maybe like one of the first times in my life, putting all of my energy into this one piece. And so I did, and it really started to just take off. We landed a partnership with Google Cloud for Startups, which is a different arm than who I was working for. And we started traveling the country, doing the event in Google offices. Atlanta, Chicago, New York, Baltimore, Detroit, and we were based in DC. So DC, and it was just phenomenal to watch. This was just civic engagement. So the way it works is, like, women pitch their businesses, but the audience actually donates to the founder that they like. So they vote with their dollars. And, little did I know that I had come up with this major vehicle for getting access to capital directly to founders, and kind of circumventing a lot of the, like, slower moving systems that where you have to apply and wait and figure it out. And, or you have to figure out, like, when trying to get money from the government, you got to figure out how to even get into the procurement system,
Right.
which is a whole nother thing. So, I figured this thing out. But to me, it was just like, oh, this is great. People love it. And then really rolling it into a real true business model, and building out into Black-owned ventures now. So now we have funded directly 130 women. We have efforts across 12 cities. We are the largest entrepreneur support organization for Black and brown women on the East Coast. Yeah.
That's
we just
incredible.
we just landed a partnership with Nike. We work with now some of the largest brands in the world. So Nike, Visa. We're working with a few, like Kim Crawford Wines. Working with Manifestation Babe. So we're excited about where we're going. Yeah, Afro Sheen, which is a big one. Ulta Beauty, we had an opportunity to work with them. So yeah,
Wow.
this is exciting.
It is so exciting. Three things stand out to me. I love that you went to a psychic, because I had a very similar experience with a psychic when I started my business. And that's just so funny to me. And number two is you're like the queen of trial and error. Like, you seem to be the queen of just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. And I know that most people give up after like the first thing doesn't work out or the second thing doesn't work out. And I don't know too many people that get to like that third or even fourth or God forbid fifth thing that maybe didn't quite turn out the way that they wanted. And they don't ever get themselves to maybe the 10th thing that is the thing that takes off. I'm just curious, what is the thing that kept you going, until like through this whole journey until you've reached what seems to be like one of your callings, which is Black Girl Ventures?
Yeah. Imagination kept me going.
Can you
to
expand
be honest
on that?
with you, just like always being like, let me say this. After I made the TP work, you couldn't tell me anything. I'm like,
I know, seriously though.
I could make anything work. If I can get people to sleep in my living room in a TP, then I am like magical, right? At that point. And so, so I think, one of the keys to that is finding the thing that you do make work really, really well. And then imagine that everything you do can be that, right? Because at that point, it was such a random idea that it could have been anything, and it can be anything, right? Like it's like this invincible kind of unstoppable feeling, especially when everybody thinks you're crazy. Like, what, girl? Just go get a job. Just go get a job, and you're like, no, like I will not, because if they can just lay me off because they disagree or don't like or something, like I'm not doing that,
Yeah.
And you don't get to tell me how much I'm worth. You don't get to look at what I've been doing for the last 2 years to be like, oh, you know what? That's worth. Where does that even come from? So let's say I'm like, hey, you know what, Catherine? Over the last year, I noticed that you've been like sleeping a lot and you like work out sometime, So now that you want to be a personal trainer, we think that's gonna be worth $20,000. What? And you like, I'm a personal trainer since I was 5. Okay. So I think that idea is always like felt abnormal to me. And I've never been a great employee. Like I'm the one that like, I can't just get in there and do my quote unquote job. I'm wanting to change things, mix it up. Let's throw some paint on the wall. And they're like, yeah, no, we just kind of like the white. And I'm like, what?
Have you always been this way? Like what? Because you have such a great mentality, like a great mindset. Everything that I teach on my platforms and my podcast is helping women develop mindsets that support their biggest, wildest dreams. And you have an incredible mindset where you're like, you can't tell me what I'm worth. Like, you can't tell me that that's not going to work. Like, I can make anything possible. As long as I have a vision and imagination for it, like I can literally create anything. Where does that come from for you? Were you like born with that? Does that come from like your parents? Is that how they raised you? Or did you have like life experiences that built that for you?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that before. I think it comes from, because I do not know the source. All right, let me say I just was born a little crazy. But I would say where I think it comes from, there's a couple places. One, and I don't even know if I've ever acknowledged this in this way. One, I think that, so growing up, I had a lot of like things, I mean, up until my brother was born, I had my own toy room, but, just a lot of colors. I had a lot, colorful things. I had baby dolls and books. And my mom read to me every night. And I think through her reading to me, that really had a lot to do with why my imagination is the way it is in stories. I remember this one book. It was a Hello Kitty book, and she loses her kite, and this random animal that no one could probably identify, kind of like a mix between like a bear and something else. It wasn't. I don't know. It came to rescue her in a hot air balloon, and I always from that point loved hot air balloons. I have a hot air balloon tattooed on my arm, and then when I grew up, I found the book because I kept a lot of my books. And this hot air balloon was the most plain. It really looked like a whoopee cushion. It was not. But in my mind, it looked like the one that I ended up getting tattooed on my arm, which was like colorful, multicolored, big. And it was so nice, right? And in that moment, when I looked at the book, I went, how I interpreted that was like, okay, well, she lost her kite. Clearly somebody's got to help her. So, here is this, animal in this hot air balloon. But in my mind, it was more colorful than it looked. So when I say imagination, I think that like this idea that my vision of what I see is more colorful than it looks is something that came from childhood. My mom, I've always been really independent. Even like from a really, really young age, my mom talks about, me doing certain things and like, but I always was like, it was never like, it wasn't like, oh, it's a protege, like in my mind, it was just like, oh, like my mom, I was like 2 or 3 and I like pushed the chair and like got up and made me some toast. And I was like sitting on the couch. And so she comes in the living room. She's like, what? Like, what did you do? And I'm like, I was hungry, like it wasn't, it was just so interesting. I just, my imagination would go so far. And I think a lot of it started with stories. And so I used to write poetry and, I still write poetry, but I've been writing it since I was about 8. And I started writing poetry because I couldn't finish my stories because it was just going on and on and on and on. It might as well have been like seasons of a sitcom. It was just like, yeah, and then, and then, and then, and there's always an and then, and yes. I think that's how I think about it now, right?
Yeah. I think that's such a great metaphor to you because it seemed like in your journey of entrepreneurship, there's always an and then. Like there's always like another thing and another. So now I see how you've been able to scale 100 businesses. That makes complete sense. And like Black Girl Ventures is like this extension of you being able to create and thens for so many more people so that this whole like this whole entrepreneurship thing can just like, grow, I guess, like wings and fingertips that just extend everywhere and like create constant and thens. So I freaking love that. Going to Black Girl Ventures.
You said that so well. I'm going to use that clip.
Yes. Can you share more about like the pitch competition? Because let me tell you, when I learned about your organization and I learned about this like Shark Tank type pitch competition, that got me so excited because I've been watching Shark Tank for a really long time. And it's so funny because everyone is kind of on either side of Shark Tank. Like people are either imagining themselves going onto Shark Tank or like a Shark Tank type experience and pitching their businesses and getting a shark to say yes to them and then like their whole life and their whole business changing, and or someone on the investment side, like being able to help these businesses. And I have always imagined myself on the investment side. And so every time, like, because I know that I'm not creative enough to create so many like crazy ideas to disrupt industries the way that these entrepreneurs can, but I know that I'm someone who's really good at manifesting money. And I know that money is a tool that we can use for good and we can choose to vote with our dollars. And I've always seen myself as being an investor in ideas that are going to change the world for the better. And so when I heard about Black Girl Ventures, I was like, oh my God, my Shark Tank dream is about to get freaking fulfilled. Like, this is incredible. And the fact that you open up this pitch competition for any Black or brown woman identifying entrepreneur to come pitch, and anyone in the audience to be able to be a shark. So it's not just like 5 sharks, but it's like everyone can be a shark. I think that is so freaking cool. Can you just describe more about like how the process works and get us super excited for what's to come?
Yeah, totally. So, with the way it works is you have to be at least a year in business, revenue generating, and under $1 million in revenue. We view it as catalytic capital, is non-dilutive. So it's for the audience, it's actually a charitable donation. And then we grant out to the founders. One of the things that I realized about the Shark Tank experience, which everybody was doing, I think art imitates life, life imitates art. So I think that it was people were already doing pitch competitions, then Shark Tank happened, and then more people started doing pitch competitions, and they started doing it exactly like Shark Tank.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, okay, so let me get this right. If 1% of the country holds the most wealth in the country, right? Then why would I create another Shark Tank for Black women when that also is the exact same thing? So like the smallest set of people in the room are making a decision here. So typically, like when you go to pitch competitions, there's an audience, and then there's your 3 or 4 judges, and the judges are making a decision. Well, to me, that mirrors the problem, right? Like the problem is we're giving a small set of people some decision making power over people, or these people are viewed as the experts, therefore they make all the decisions. Now, don't get me wrong. I think pitch competition should exist, and I'm not dinging anyone out there who does them in that way. I think it's a yes and, right? Like everything needs to be in existence in order for us to push forward. But the way I looked at it, so at first when we started, the audience would actually give the feedback. Like the audience would actually talk. They would raise their hands and then they would ask the questions directly. Well, what I learned from that is that was such great consumer feedback that like it was like, wow, oh wow, like I get to know not just off of a survey, but just based off of me pitching, I get to know what people might think or be questioning about my product or service. Therefore, I can go back as a founder and now like, revamp that. So it was just like, wow. But then we got too big. So we went from like, audiences of 30, 40, 80, and then it was like 250 people. So I couldn't open it up to everyone. So I had to have judges, but we were really clear with the judges when we, with them to say, listen, there's a Harvard Board Review article that says that women are asked prevention questions and men are asked promotion questions. And so those questions are the difference between like, well, how will you get these downloads versus what's your plan to acquire X people, right? Like that is you already assuming that the man has a plan. And then assuming that the woman still has to figure it out. And so we made sure that we kind of, let them know, hey, you're here to push the broader community's thought forward on what questions they may have, not here to be like some definitive judge on what can or cannot be, right? So the people who are pitching, they get audience consumer feedback, those votes. So we're always the largest influencer in the room, like us and our partner. So even if they go out and get like their friends and family to give, which everybody does, which they should, because it's also an exercise in fundraising for them. I remember when we piloted, we did it with a certain set of founders that were in the larger competition. I'm like, hey, I'll give you all this code, this link, go raise more and see what happens. And they did. And when they came back, it was a lot of their friends and family. And I said, well, why do you think they gave to us versus just you going and saying, hey, can you give me, X amount?
Yeah.
And it was because they felt like they were a part of something bigger. And I was like, okay. Click, click, click. Now I'm like, I got it, right? So with this pitch competition, not only are they getting access to capital, meaning like cash capital, but they're getting access to social capital. They're getting access to consumer feedback. And they're getting access to training themselves on being able to fundraise alongside someone else, which alleviates a little bit of the pressure. Like traditional crowdfunding through like, Kickstarter, GoFundMe comes with an opportunity cost. You have to have a network already. You have to be able to go out and share it, build a video, tell a story well. And so some people may not make it to their goal. So my thought was, we can work together collaboratively against history, in my opinion, to help you actually raise some capital. Because historically, these founders may or may not have access to generational wealth because just of historical context around, rights, jobs, all these kinds of things.
Yeah. I think it's so incredible what you're doing, creating so much opportunity for people who may have not had opportunity before in the past. And it's just so inspiring. Like, this is just such a beautiful example of like money is a tool and we get to use it to impact the world. You know, money's not good or bad. It's completely neutral, and it's the people behind the money who are able to make these decisions, and it's voting power. I love your style of competition, like the everything that you just described and the differences between, you know, traditional pitch competitions or like Shark Tank style and how you want everybody involved. It makes it so much more inclusive, and that's incredible. What is your like ultimate vision for Black Girl Ventures? Like, where do you see it in like 5 to 10 years, if you even have that vision right now?
Yeah, I do. So we are going to, what I really want to see is that we facilitate more capital to more founders. I think that I'm looking at like, what can I do with what I created? So we're working and being creative with working with people. So we're working with a ice cream brand right now called Cool House, where we are developing our own ice cream flavor that will then in turn, every time somebody buys this ice cream flavor, it will create a grant for a Black or brown women entrepreneur to get access to marketing, design, and IP, right? That's a creative way to partner is not just like, hey, we're raising capital, can you give us whatever
Yeah.
so we can do our efforts? It's like, we're going to create this very specific thing based off of what we know is a need in the market, right?
Yeah.
And then we are moving our chapter, what was our chapter program, into being a fellowship. And it'll be a 9-month fellowship where we will provide wraparound services and education along with a $10,000 stipend. Because I want to but I want to include in our efforts not only people being business owners, but being business leaders, and
Mm.
how hyperlocally women's voices are amplified as business leaders.
Mm.
Because the next time I ask a kid who is an entrepreneur, I do not want to hear that it's Mark Zuckerberg, right? Like, that is not the pillar of entrepreneurship. There's
Mm-hmm.
women all around them, launching these companies, running these companies, running them in the background with a man as the leader. Like, and I want other little girls to see themselves in it. So we're going to be expanding to more cities, focusing on supplier diversity, focusing on the fellowship program, and then maybe even looking at, not maybe, we are looking at global, global expansion.
That's so cool. I'm going to put you on the spot, and it might be a little bit of a hard question, but if you were to pick one or maybe a few, if that's really hard, of your favorite Black Girl Venture success stories, which would it be? Do you have like an example that is like something that blew your own mind, like something that someone achieved because of the access to capital and the access to social capital and all the incredible benefits that you guys offer? Is there like something that someone took from like, you know, X point to Y point and it just blew you away?
Yeah. So one of our founders, she received an anonymous donation for $100,000 at
Wow.
the DC Pitch Competition. Kendra Woolridge, the founder of Janet and Joe. And we videotaped us telling her, and she thought I was just, doing a video of her, like video feedback and what she thinks about things. And then I told her like, oh, we got a donation for $100,000. And she like broke down and she talked about how like, her mom had passed away. Like, she just wanted her mom to see her launch the company. And her mom
Mm.
passed away like 2 weeks after she launched. And, she's like, so to have someone who is not your family, she's like, with your friends and families, like, you expect them to kind of support because they're your friends and family. But to have an organization that supports you, that does not know you, is not, just based off of, some levels of relationship, but that they are willing to grow that relationship, give you direct feedback. With the pitch, what she realized is when she did the pitch practice, because we do pitch practice first. So there's an application process. We vet them out. And review them. We have reviewers. We bring them in. They do pitch practice twice, 2 pitch practices before the event, and then they tape, and then the event goes live. So, and then they have judges that give feedback, like I said earlier. One of the things she got as feedback was that she wasn't asking for enough money, and she
Wow.
asked for $50K. She walked away with $70K, in her pocket, plus whatever she raised, because that was on top of whatever she had raised. And so she was able to fulfill a very large PO that she had on the table and didn't know, wasn't sure exactly how she was going to fulfill it. We were able to get her some conversations around her finances and how she's like managing how she's managing the pieces of the company. We're actually able to connect her to some information around like what makes the most sense for how she's managing her product and inventory. So yeah, it was amazing. And so she's one of our like, we want to create more Kendra moments. Like that is our, it's like we want that to happen.
What is the company name again that she founded?
Janet and Joe, and it is a non-toxic nail care.
Ooh, I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah, non-toxic nail polish.
All right, you guys
Janet
listening.
And Joe.
You guys listening, check that out, okay? Because I am looking for non-toxic nail care. So that is, I think I just manifested that, Shelly. So thank you.
Look at that. Okay. I was so excited to work with you because I am all about manifesting things. I am a master manifester.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, speaking of that, what is the coolest thing you've ever manifested? Like, what's a cool manifestation story you can share?
Ooh.
If you had to pick one, I'm sure of thousands.
My first surprising one was probably my first teaching job. So at the end of college, like as college is coming to a close, I'm about to get my computer science degree, but I was in love with this guy. And so he's like moving to his home city, which was Charlotte, North Carolina. And I'm like, okay, so, but I'm a computer scientist, right? So I'm thinking like, what does that look like? And I thought to myself, well, I'll just be a teacher. Now I'll just teach for like a year and then I'll find a corporate job and I'll go and I'll be a software engineer. I had no idea like where the teaching job was going to come from, how I was going to become a teacher. But when people would ask me, well, what are you going to do at the school? I'm like, oh, I'm going to be a teacher. And they're like, oh yeah. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be a teacher. Now, like I said, no clue, no contacts, no nothing. I don't even know if I put in my application at that point. So I finally do put it in my application and they're on a hiring freeze. So, but when people kept asking me, what you going to do after college? I kept saying, I'm going to be a teacher. Yep. I'm going to go and I'm going to teach and I'm going to do that for a little while. I'm going to do something else. I was just telling my story that hadn't happened yet. I have no clue how it was going to happen. So I started bugging this lady in the HR office and I was calling her. I'm like, hey, so I would be like, I'm checking in, to the point where like she would know me by name. She would know that it's me calling. She'd be like, Shelly, we still on the hiring freeze, right? So I'm like, one day she calls me down. She says, okay, you can go and interview with this middle school principal, right? So I interview with him. I knock it out of the box. And I said, what would you want me to know? Like if you were going to hire me, he said, know your students and have fun. And I always kept that. Even like any community I work in, anybody that I'm working with, it's like know what you're doing with that particular thing, community, job, business, whatever, and have fun. And I said, you know what? I'm coming. Well, I'm gonna work here. This is where I'm gonna work. And so I was calling the lady. Finally, maybe like a couple weeks before graduation, they lifted the hiring freeze. And she was like, you got a job.
Oh my God.
And I had to find somewhere to live. I had to find somewhere to live and everything. Because, I really didn't have the job, quote unquote, I had it, but I was steadily like, words are spells, right? So like the more that you speak out into existence, like what you want, and the more that you draw boundaries around what you are not going to be called anymore, right? Like, I was having a disagreement with a friend and he said, well, if you would stop being challenging, I said, oh, no. I am not challenging. It's not what this is. Your interpretation of how you feel about what I'm saying to you, because I'm not agreeing, feels challenging to you. What I will not own and what I return to sender. I am not a challenging person, right? And you have to be active about it sometimes to like really hold up a mirror to people to bounce that stuff off of you. Else you start owning it in your own words and manifestations. Like, oh, sometimes I'm challenging, but I'm just no. Oh, sometimes I, don't always remember. Sometimes I'm blah, blah. No, not sometimes you are. You are saying you are. And now you are putting a spell on yourself and manifesting more and more that you are sometimes that thing. And you could, no, you're not. You're not that thing. Somebody told you were that thing, right? So I'm really big on like words and, making sure that I'm saying the things that push energy forward. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I absolutely love your certainty too. Like the certainty that you have, like this TP is going to work, or this teacher job is going to work. This pitch competition, it's going to work. I mean, everything, you come from a place of like, this is going to work. And like, that's not to say that you don't ever, come across challenges or obstacles or anything like that. You will learn things, throughout your journey. There are trial and errors that you've experienced, but like overall, you've overcome all of those obstacles and challenges because you have so much certainty that what you want is going to work. And that's exactly what you get. And you're such a prime example of that. And it's amazing.
100%. 100%. Yeah. I wish that when people ask me like, how do you do it? And like, I wish I could give you a how. I wish I could be like, you know what? I have a button under my arm and I just press it, but it's not, it's not that. And it takes maintenance.
Yes.
Maintaining you have to maintaining your energy and your certainty. It takes maintenance. And I get coaches. I believe that a lot of people ask for mentors when they really need coaches. It's mentor is the regular thing that people tell us. You need a role model. You need a mentor. It tells us that from being kids. And we keep that. And we're like, oh, I need a mentor. It's a free relationship. You think you're going to find the right person to just mentor you. And I'm like, that's great. Maybe you will, but you need coaching. There is not a successful person on the planet that has not had a coach.
Yes. As someone who's had many coaches, I completely agree with that. You need someone to point out your blind spots. And a mentor is not typically someone who is asking, you the right questions and getting inside your head and figuring out what your mental obstacles are or what your energetic obstacles are. And so someone who can really come to understand the way that you think and the spells that you might be putting out into the universe, with the words and the labels that you might be accepting that aren't you, but you think are you because that's what you've been called your whole life. It just makes such a big difference. And I'm also very, very much pro coach. And I think I'm also pro mentor, pro coach, pro anybody. Like I love, one of the things I also love about what you do is the community aspect, because I know that entrepreneurship is very isolating, especially in the world of COVID. My God, it's become even more isolating. So to be able to have this connection and community and be able to have coaches and mentors and people to support you, I think is so, so crucial. So I absolutely love everything that you're doing. And Shelly, I just wanted to thank you so much for coming onto the Manifestation Babe podcast. And I am very, very excited and grateful. And my entire team is very excited and grateful to be a part of your mission to empower as many Black and Brown entrepreneurs to fulfill their wildest dreams and literally take over the world through entrepreneurship. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your mission. It's just so much appreciation for you.
Thank you for having me. And thank you for your partnership. We're equally excited. So let's go change the world together.
Yes. And to any of you guys listening, if you want to be part of the pitch competition happening on March 25th, I'm going to drop all of the details in the show notes. So you can check those out by swiping up if you're on iTunes, or I believe it's like the See More button on Spotify if you're listening on Spotify. And then go ahead and tag both at Manifestation Babe and at Black Girl Ventures. Shelly, do you have a personal Instagram that you use as well?
I do, at I am Shelly Bell.
I am Shelly Bell. If you can tag all three of those, letting us know that you listened to this episode and share any incredible takeaways that you took away from this podcast episode, as well as share the link to the pitch competition to anyone that you think would be a great fit to apply. And if you want to be part of the audience as well, that's all going to go down on March 25th. All right, you guys, I'm going to catch you in the next episode. Have an amazing day. Mwah. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you absolutely loved what you heard today, be sure to share it with me by leaving a review on iTunes so that I can keep the good stuff coming your way. If you aren't already following me on social media, come soak up the extra inspiration on Instagram by following at Manifestation Babe or visiting my website at manifestationbabe.com. I love and adore you so much and can't wait to connect with you in the next episode. In the meantime, go out there and manifest some magic.